Just another late-night errand before heading home. But within minutes, flashing lights surrounded his car. Hands raised, voice steady, he did everything right. Yet the officers dragged him out anyway. They thought he was suspicious. They thought he was someone else. By sunrise, those same cops would be standing in court, staring at the man they'd arrested, now wearing a judge's robe. How does justice unfold when the man they profiled becomes the one holding their fate? Stay with me, because this story will change how you see power, privilege, and accountability forever. Before that night at the gas station, Judge Marcus Holloway was known for his calm voice, fair rulings, and unshakable belief in justice. To his colleagues, he was the man who always reminded them that the law must protect everyone equally. To his neighbors, he was just Marcus, the quiet man who waved at kids on their bikes, filled his tank at the same corner station, and never thought twice about how people saw him. But even a man of the law isn't safe from prejudice. It was late on a cool Friday evening. Marcus had just finished a long week in court, handling cases about fairness, accountability, and police conduct. Ironically, he had even spoken earlier that day about bias in the justice system. He stopped for gas, still in his work clothes, his mind on dinner and his kids waiting at home. Nothing unusual until 2 patrol cars rolled in. Their lights flashed before Marcus could even pull the nozzle from his car. 2 officers approached, hands hovering near their holsters, eyes sharp with suspicion. The air shifted, heavy and cold. One of them barked, "ID! What are you doing here this late?" Marcus blinked, startled. "I'm just getting gas." But they didn't hear him. Or maybe they didn't want to. To them, he wasn't Judge Holloway. He wasn't a respected member of the community. He was just another black man at a gas station in a white neighborhood. And in the next few minutes, everything Marcus believed about justice, everything he'd spent, his life defending, would be tested in ways he never imagined. The cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around Marcus's wrists before he could even process what was happening. His mind raced. He'd done nothing wrong. No laws broken. No reason to be treated like this. But the officers weren't listening. "Step away from the vehicle," one barked, his flashlight cutting through the dark. Marcus tried to explain, his voice calm, steady, the same voice that commanded courtrooms every day. "Officers, I'm a judge. My identification is in my wallet." "Please, let me— Quiet!" the younger cop interrupted. "We'll decide what you are," the tone, the glare, the disbelief in their eyes. Marcus knew that look. He'd seen it from the bench too many times. The look that said, "You don't belong here." As they pinned him against his own car, his robe, neatly folded in the passenger seat, slid into view. But to them, it didn't matter. They saw what they wanted to see. Suspicious vehicle. "Possible theft," one officer muttered into his radio. The absurdity of it hit Marcus like a wave. He wasn't a suspect. He was being profiled. Inside, anger burned, but he stayed silent. He knew how quickly resistance could turn dangerous. He'd heard too many stories end in tragedy. A small crowd started to gather, the gas station clerk, a few late-night drivers. Some whispered. Others filmed, and Marcus realized this wasn't just about him anymore. This was about every person who'd ever been judged by their skin before their words. "Officer," he said softly, "you're making a mistake." But they didn't stop. They searched his car, emptied his briefcase, case files, legal documents, and a nameplate that read, "Judge Marcus Holloway." The silence that followed was deafening. One officer picked up the nameplate, frowning. "Wait, you're a judge?" Marcus met his eyes. "Yes, and I expect to be treated with the same respect you'd give anyone else." The older officer hesitated, the weight of realization sinking in. The younger one looked pale, his voice trembling. We thought you were someone else." "Someone else," Marcus repeated slowly. "You mean someone who looked like me?" They didn't answer. After several long, tense minutes, the handcuffs came off. No apology, no explanation. Just a quiet, uncomfortable silence as they backed away. Marcus stood there, wrists sore, dignity bruised, but his resolve stronger than ever. He said nothing more. He didn't need to. The next morning, the same officers would walk into his courtroom expecting routine. But when the judge entered, the man they'd humiliated hours before, their faces froze. Their world in that moment turned upside down. Marcus didn't raise his voice. He didn't seek revenge. He simply opened the case file, looked them in the eye, and said, "Let's begin." They had no idea that the lesson was only just beginning, and this time, justice would look them square in the face. The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that feels heavy, almost alive. The two officers shifted in their seats, realizing exactly who stood before them. Judge Marcus Holloway, the same man they'd handcuffed, humiliated, and dismissed as suspicious just hours ago. The irony hung thick in the air. Marcus's robe, once wrinkled and tossed aside on the gas station pavement, now flowed behind him like armor. But inside, his heart pounded. He wasn't just fighting for himself. He was fighting for every moment of quiet humiliation that so many before him had endured. "Officers," he began, his voice calm but cutting through the silence like a blade. "You stand accused of unlawful detention and racial profiling. Do you understand the charges?" The younger officer couldn't meet his gaze. The older one swallowed hard, mumbling, "Yes, Your Honor." Marcus leaned forward, eyes steady. "Do you remember last night?" Neither spoke. Their silence was an answer. For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. The entire room could feel the weight of that pause, the reversal of power, the echo of justice turning its gaze on those who thought they stood above it. But this wasn't about vengeance. It was about truth. "I want you to remember something," Marcus continued. "When you looked at me, you didn't see a man. You saw a color. And that blindness is exactly what poisons justice in this country." His words hit like thunder. Reporters scribbled notes. The gallery whispered. For the first time, the officers looked small, not because they were caught, but because they were seen. Marcus's voice softened, but every syllable carried fire. "This courtroom isn't just a place for punishment. It's a place for accountability. And today accountability has found you." He struck the gavel once. The sound echoed like a heartbeat, and in that single moment, the man who had been handcuffed at a gas station became the symbol of everything justice was meant to be. The courtroom emptied slowly that day, but something deeper lingered in the air. It wasn't anger. It wasn't triumph. It was change. Quiet, steady, and undeniable. Judge Marcus Holloway didn't send the officers to jail. Instead, he ordered something far more powerful, a mandatory reform program for racial bias and public accountability, one that would force officers to confront the very prejudice they'd shown. "Punishment fades," he said softly, "but understanding lasts." In the weeks that followed, the video from the gas station spread across the country. People were stunned, not just by the injustice, but by how the story ended. They saw a man who chose grace over fury, justice over revenge. A man who turned humiliation into healing. But Marcus didn't forget that night. He still felt the cold sting of the cuffs, the doubt in their eyes, the silence that followed. Yet he carried it, not as a wound, but as a warning. Every time he looked at a new case, every time he saw a young man stand trembling before him, he remembered. Sometimes justice isn't blind. It's looking the wrong way. And it's our job to make it see again. The officers later admitted that moment in court changed them. One resigned. The other began speaking publicly about racial bias in policing. The system didn't fix itself overnight, but for once, it listened. And maybe that's where change begins. Not in the headlines, but in the moments when truth is too powerful to ignore. So, the next time you see someone judged for their skin before their story, ask yourself, would you have seen a suspect or a man just trying to get home? Because sometimes the smallest act of judgment can reveal the biggest truth about who we are.